Hi, I'm Mark Villasana, proud SMU alumni and agency principal of Northwest Insurance Agency. Give me a call if you'd like to discuss your insurance or if you just want to discuss SMU football. My phone number is 214-352-5656, or you can email me at info@nwagencies.com. Pony up.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to a live edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me. Got a lot of mailbag questions to get to, and they are all from our ontheponyexpress.com subscribers. Head over to ontheponyexpress.com to subscribe today using code SMU1. That gets you 2 months for just $1. Special YouTube podcast code for you guys. So excited to get into these, and we will jump right in. As Mark mentioned, we're presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Give him a call, 214-352-5655, 214-352-5656, or email him info@nwagencies.com. All right. Like I said, these mailbag questions submitted this morning by our ontheponyexpress.com subscribers, and we're going to work through them here and maybe do a couple sidebars as people jump in the comments on our YouTube channel as well. But we lead off with Maddie Bell's Ghost. When do things pick up for the basketball transfer portal as far as news, visits, and commitments? So used to being locked in on the football recruiting side of things. And I can tell you that SMU is hosting, or wrapped up hosting before they went out west, one of the top available transfers right now, and that is Nana Owusu Anane. I think maybe I got that right, but the Brown transfer was on campus starting Sunday evening, had an official visit to check out SMU, and he's one of the more sought after early transfer portal window players. 6'8" senior from Canada, has a top 8 of SMU along with Arizona State, Baylor, Grand Canyon, Kansas State, Louisville, San Diego State. Kansas hosted him a couple weeks back. He averaged 14.7 points, 8.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists per game. Last season, he had a partially torn labrum that sidelined him for this season. And the plan for him is to enroll in a new school this summer and play for his squad starting in the 25-26 season. And SMU's in the mix, looking to track down some intel for our On the Pony Express subscribers on how the weekend went. And away from the floor, obviously SMU suffered that loss to Clemson on Saturday, but they did have Ryan Hampton, the number 1 overall prospect in 2027, who's an SMU legacy, and Marcus Spears Jr., a 2027 top 10 prospect, on campus for that Clemson game. So they were both courtside watching the Mustangs along with the SMU signees from the Dallas area, Jermaine O'Neal Jr., Jaden Toombs, catching the Clemson game. So it was a big recruiting weekend for Andy Enfield and his staff. But to answer the question of the transfer portal, that is going to heat up after the season. And I believe, I'm checking right now, that the transfer portal window begins March 24th and runs through April 22nd. And for those wondering about the women's side of things, it starts March 25th, ends April 23rd. The window opens after the second round of the NCAA tournament. So it'll be that 30-day window as well when coaches leave. So if a school fires their coach as soon as the regular season or tournament is over, that does start a transfer portal window, a 30-day window. And of course, that stretches past the closing date, so April 22nd. And as we saw, SMU built their roster late into the summer, adding Samet Yigitolu at the end there, but he wasn't a transfer portal player. But the roster for SMU, I would imagine, will undergo some changes. It wouldn't surprise me to see some attrition, and we'll go from there to see how Andy Enfield and his staff really go about building up next year's roster. And I would have to think, and of course they're, I guess at best, a dark horse for 5-star guard Braden Burries right now. It just seems like other schools have momentum. and he did take an official visit this fall to SMU, but that would be about the only high school player that I've heard about or that we're keeping tabs on in terms of roster construction. I would think they want to add to the backcourt and upgrade maybe the wing position a little bit. And we'll see kind of what they do as far as roster spots go that they'll have. So they did sign 3 players out of the high school ranks, and they have another committed in BJ Davis-Ray. So that's 4 as of now expected to come in next season. So good opening question to kick things off with the basketball side of things. And then this summer for SMU football, Maddie Bell asks, who's arriving in the summer? You don't have to list the freshmen who didn't enroll early, asking more for transfers. And have any of the people you've hinted at have some things to sort out to be able to get things resolved, or are they still pending? So 2-part question here. All the transfers are in, from what I understand. The only one that is not, you could say, is junior college additions. Devon Martin, tight end, who they signed, a really, total high upside type of player that they brought in from the junior college ranks. And then Link Rhodes will be here this summer. So the speedy wideout out of Delta College, who was the National Signing Day edition, will be here this summer. Everyone else, to my knowledge, is here on campus. So SMU's transfer class is getting to work and working with Sean Griswold, getting ready for spring ball. And it'll be a critical one for SMU with many new faces on the defensive side of the ball, in particular, to get those guys ready to go when it comes to getting them going for the fall. And then they have other high school players, just to list them off for those who are wondering, that are still to come, including top 100 offensive lineman Jermod Odoms. He arrives this summer. 4-star running back Jermico Green, Carterius Brown, a lanky wide receiver, Zay Gentry, a big corner addition, big recruiting battle win there. He'll arrive this summer, as well as Sael Reyes, DeSoto standout safety, Isaiah Robertson, wide receiver, Elijah Pratt, safety out of IMG by way of Arlington, does arrive this summer. Tyrone Winslow, big defensive lineman, arrives this summer. Abel Ho'opi'i arrives this summer, as does Devin Ferris. They're hoping he can make it to campus, keeping an eye on some grades there over the spring semester. And then Miles Uter is the tight end out of Bayside Academy in Daphne, who will arrive this summer. So with that, great opportunity to talk about our friends at My Perfect Franchise as well. And that is because Andy Ludicky, a franchise consultant and a franchise owner, is really good friends with the Uters. And he has committed that if you do sign with him and sign with a franchise that he helps you get in touch with, he'll contribute money back to SMU's NIL program. So a good reason to just go ahead and have the conversation with Andy Ludicky and talk with him about your franchise options, whether you just want to completely leave the corporate rat race or whether you want a different opportunity to help you and your family grow to your financial goals. He can help you. Go to myperfectfranchise.net or give him a call, 404-973-9901, or email him, Andy, ANDY, at myperfectfranchise.net. A good question here comes from the chat from Probation Coach, and we've talked about this behind the scenes on the message board at ontheponyexpress.com, but Rocket Rahimi is a guy who did commit to SMU. He was a one-time commit 2 years ago now, sat out the 2023 season, I believe it was, and then went on to play at San Diego State in 2024. And he is somebody that is awaiting a waiver. And so that won't be resolved for quite some time. And there's not a ton of confidence in the whole waiver process. So if SMU gets him on campus, great. If not, that will just be somebody that they, I don't think he'll be able to play anywhere. Basically, he'll have to go, I guess, maybe supplemental draft and give that a shot with the NFL is my guess, if he can't get a waiver to play this fall. So that's the one that maybe Maddie Bell was asking about, but that one I haven't seen any movement, at least from my conversations as of late. I don't think things shifted there in the last week or so, but I'll circle back with some folks and double check. And if that does happen, we will update you guys at ontheponyexpress.com. So great place to be on the message board there, where we're chatting about all these types of questions all day, every day. And we continue on with probation coaches questions from the message board this time. And he asked the freshman most likely to play and play a lot in the fall. So don't know if this is a two-parter as far as like who will get on the field and play maybe some special teams or see some time here and there, and then who's going to play a lot. But when I look at the group that SMU brought in, I think you have to start at the wide receiver position here, because there is such a need for SMU to have somebody step up. And we know that Link Rhodes is the hot name and all of those things with his impressive junior college tape, albeit on a really brutal team. I mean, he is really, really fast. He's yoked up. He looks like he should be obviously in a college program, a major college program. But as far as the freshmen go, Jalen Cooper and Dalen Singleton, I think SMU, and this is one thing where it'll be interesting to see what happens, because of course they have to adjust. They have to buy in. They have to learn the playbook. They have to do all of those things. But Rhett Lashley said at his signing day press conference that they're going to kind of throw people in the deep end, it sounds like, if they're at that point where they can even be thrown in the deep end, which I'm sure is the caveat there. But Jalen Cooper and Dalen Singleton are two true freshmen that are on campus now working out with the team. And if you follow Dalen Singleton on Twitter, he hasn't been shy sharing that he is, maybe the fastest guy on the team. His 10-yard splits and sprints are really impressive, very, very elite. And if that's the case, I would expect at minimum Dalen Singleton to play early as a true freshman. And that's because SMU needs a jolt of speed. They need his high-end playmaking ability that he showed at DeSoto High School. And Jalen Cooper, in terms of production, in terms of consistency in that production, has been one of the best in Texas the last few years. So if you couple all of that together for those two, those are guys that right off the bat jump out at me as far as players that could play early and are at positions where I don't think you can really count out players playing early. I mean, they just have, needed a wide receiver to become a game breaker. And maybe this is a shift in a sense, because, and this is two parts here, SMU has wide receivers that they've signed. They've had guys that have kind of come up. They have a guy like Randy Reese, who they'd love to see break through and be a guy that contributes at a high level in the slot. But they also haven't really played many young players in a sense. Derek McFall, with the flashes that he showed, you thought maybe would have gotten a little bit more burn down the stretch to maybe take some off of Brashard Smith plate and help him maybe stay a little bit more, fresh and or healthy. But that didn't happen. They got him all the way to the end and were able to redshirt him. But they need to maybe play some of these young wide receivers and just see how it goes. See who breaks through, see who is that gamer. And not to bring everything back to Kevin Jennings, but when we talked about Kevin Jennings coming through this program and coming up, and part of the debate was, you would see Kevin Jennings flash all of those things in practice. And then, of course, you'd see him do what he's done at some key moments against good defenses, and that's turn the ball over against SMU's really good defense in practice. But it was always with Kevin, okay, if you get him in the game, he's probably going to deliver, because that's just kind of who Kevin is and has been. And at the wide receiver position, SMU has veterans like Romello Brinson. They have Jordan Hudson back. RJ Maryland, and we'll talk about him in a bit, if he recovers the way they hope and think he is, then do you play him a little bit outside and get some of those maybe mismatches with a bigger body out there because of the emergence of Matt Hibner this fall? All of those things are roadblocks for younger players getting their opportunities on the outside. But talking with Rob Likens, it's a position that is up for grabs. And the only way sometimes to really see if guys can do it is throw them out there. And I think back to Roderick Daniels playing early and getting those opportunities early in his career. Uh, he was a willing blocker. He obviously had the explosiveness, and it really would have been interesting to see him really emerge if just being completely thrown off into the deep end very early in his career in a bigger role, maybe how much more that would have helped him. So that's a line that SMU is going to walk there. And we'll see kind of where that goes because, again, very talented, high-end athletic prospects that SMU brought in at the wide receiver position. And that could be something to keep an eye on. Another player that SMU, I think, again, a position where, okay, you can see it in practice and either you're very close to putting them out there because they've earned it or they're just not there, is running back. And Jermico Green has the size, he has the physicality, and he'll be here this summer, which is maybe a roadblock to this. But if he picks up the pass protection, if he picks up all the things you want him to, he's got the skill set to contribute and play a lot. And at the running back position, you have Chris Johnson Jr., you have some returning guys like LJ Johnson and Jalen Knighton and Kamar Wheaton, the second, the pair there on the back half are recovering from off-season injuries season injuries, and they're continuing to recover this offseason. You brought in Chris Johnson Jr., a lightning fast guy, one cut, probably not Brashard Smith, but who is? I mean, he was unbelievable. Derek McFall could be, the closest thing as a redshirt freshman, but Jermico Green could add that thunder, that punch, while also being able to be explosive and a fresh option at running back. And if you look at the running back room on paper, you sign a guy like Jermico Green. I mean, he's a good bet to play a lot. And so he's one that I'm keeping a close eye on. And then lastly, you go over the defensive side and they revamp that side of the ball with, the transfer portal and doing some of those things. But Tyron Polley is an early enrollee and physically, I mean, a lot of these Duncanville DeSoto kids look like they've been in college programs for a minute now. And Man is one of those guys. I mean, he just is wired right. And Scott Simons is really big on that. On the flip side, safety is loaded with Isaiah Wachovia, with Ahmad Moses. You bring in a Lamadrick Spencer. You have guys like Jade Milner-Jones that you want to step up and others at that spot. It's a pretty deep group overall. You need, though, to see that pretty early from Tyron Polley to kind of pencil him in as maybe a rotational guy. If I'm SMU, I mean, he's a guy who's playing on special teams at minimum because physically he can do it. He probably has the smarts to be able to pick up what you're needing out of him on special teams. And that's a great way to build up that in-game experience where maybe he emerges in the back half of the season. And maybe he's ready quicker if, unfortunately, injuries happen. Maybe if there's an injury, he could be ready to go. So I'll be intrigued to see SMU's handling of man. Again, physically, he looks ready to go. And the safety position is a tough one to play, not only because it is so difficult in today's day and age of college football, but it is for SMU's defense, really a lot of the calls come down from the safeties and things like that. So that's where you got to be absolutely ready to go. And Tyron Polley is very experienced in Texas high school ranks. I mean, he started for Duncanville for years, but you've got to be able to put all that together pretty quickly. So early rumblings on potential most improved player candidates. This is a good question. I actually had to figure out MIP for a second there, but I think I put it together. Most improved candidates for me, I'll pick one on each side of the ball. And I'll start on the offensive side. And I think Derek McFall is going to take a big jump up. And that is, one, critical for SMU. And two, I think he's wired the right way to do it. And last year was a chance for him to get some experience, see what Brashard Smith did, say to himself now, all right, I want that. And then two, you look at his skill set, very similar ability to catch the football. He played a bunch of wide receiver at Tyler. He played a lot of running back. He played quarterback. He played all over for Tyler. And if he puts together the offseason, they're hoping that could be a guy that you look at most improved, and he would be that. I mean, you could categorize him as a breakout I would be interested to see, an Andrew Chamblee. Is he a most improved guy? That is really important for SMU's offensive line as well. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the big one that I'm going to highlight here is a guy we've been high on since the high school days, and I'm sure his dad and folks are listening, but Alex Kilgore at linebacker. He is been your heir apparent. Now he is taking over that starting job there. He's going to be critical, as well as Zakai Barker and just the rest of the linebackers stepping up. But Alex Kilgore, in my opinion, has to be your most improved player. You have Isaiah Wakobe, you have Ahmad Moses at safety that are steady and doing all those things. You'd love to see Deuce Harmon be that most improved player at corner. But Alex Kilgore in the middle has to be an absolute monster. And that'll help as a guy like Zakai Barker settles into the ACC after playing at ECU, where he was productive, really broke out and improved over his last couple of years at ECU. But it's a new position for him to be in. Alex Kilgore knows this defense. He's one of the hardest workers, and he's got the size, he's got the athleticism to have an all ACC type of season if he continues to put in the work to put all that together. So I would highlight those couple and three if you want to include Andrew Chamblee in there as most improved player candidates. Before we get into the transfer portal window, I do want to remind you guys that we're also presented by the Thomas Auto Group. So make sure you mention on the Pony Express for employee pricing on new or pre-owned vehicles from the Thomas Auto Group. They're right up the road in McKinney, SMU owned. Check them out and find out more about the Thomas Promise.
At Thomas Auto Group, the Thomas Promise includes the low price promise,
the pre-owned promise,
and the 72-hour exchange promise.
And finally, the 100% customer satisfaction promise. So shop Thomas Auto Group today, home of the Thomas Promise.
Indeed. And as the transfer portal window comes later this spring, which, by the way, it'll be really interesting to see what SMU does with its spring football. I don't think they're going to have a spring game, just my opinion. I think they're going to do something for the fans, but I don't think they are. And really, if you've been to the spring game the last few years, it's been a scrimmage. It's been, first half play, second half running clock. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's kind of how they've done it. They've done some situational things. So it's a glorified scrimmage, but with the 10-day window being April 16th through the 25th, that actually puts SMU, at least my early, I guess not so early, but rumblings of the spring football schedule for SMU, that'll put SMU in the window when spring ball is finishing up, hitting that back half of it, because I do think they'll end in late April. And so that'll be interesting to see how it goes. SMU only lost a few players from the transfer to the transfer portal. Amari Abor, Preston Stone, Jahari Rogers was in the spring, was in the fall when he left the team. But they have a chance to keep that title as least players entering the portal, but it's always a battle. And you've seen a couple of players now across the country, and this is not me throwing this out there for tea leaves or I'm hearing any rumblings of guys leaving. I mean, as the calendar turns to March, you all start asking, but you're seeing guys do what Branson Hickman and Marcus Bryant did, which is enter the portal as graduate transfers as they are now in that spring semester. They know they're going to finish their degree, and then they can say, hey, I'm going to be a grad transfer here at the end of the year. Let's start the recruiting process. But for SMU, they're in pretty good shape with a lot of their roster. And who knows, you never count things out, but they really are built on competing and offering guys a true opportunity to compete and earn their time. And if that's the case, then, we're probably not looking at many players that could transfer out. But the position that SMU is most likely to target in the spring transfer portal window, this is a really good question. This is a really hard question. I think this, as we sit here at the end of February, you have a guy that was brought in Zion Nelson from Miami. If he is on track and looks like he is going to be a guy that can contribute for you and or start, then maybe it's not offensive tackle. Maybe it's not. I could see them still going after another offensive tackle, though, and or just general offensive line add, because they just love to load up at that position and make sure that they have depth, they have competition. So that is a position that I would say that the caveat is there. And I'm going to get into multiple positions here, but the most likely to target, I mean, I would say corner. I still think they would like to go after a corner at some level, and or general secondary player, and add one more, especially if the Rocket Rahimi thing doesn't come to fruition, which as of now, I don't think it will. But that secondary spot, I would say, is the most likely transfer portal target. And that could change from, now into mid-April. They might say, all right, well, we know what we have at X position. Let's go out and get another. And they can do that because they're still under the 105, because that's what it is now. They can go up to 105 if they want to in terms of scholarships, and that'll impact walk-ons or what have you. But, they have some room here to play, which is kind of the wild thing. You almost have to retrain, and you're like, all right, they're above 85, but do they want to play at 85 and kind of do that and spend money on 85 versus, expand beyond that. So that'll be something that they figure out over the course of spring. Pony Excess asks, when is Bill Armstrong going to buy Keelan Russell back? Keelan Russell, of course, the 5-star that flipped from SMU to Alabama. Unbelievable senior year for him. Just looks really the part of a 5-star. I mean, he's unbelievable, great kid. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon. We'll see. You never know on these quarterbacks, how their careers end up going and things like that. But I don't see that happening right now. I would say I don't know if I said this on this podcast or not, but I was talking with somebody, man, and I'm not saying this for Bill, but I'm talking about anyone. Everybody looks at what Texas Tech did in the transfer portal, and that they had a billionaire that went out and, really just bankrolled all these last minute NIL deals. Man, SMU needs somebody who is, and they have people that do this, but they do it through the collectives too. But if you can find somebody who's going to sponsor the starting running back of SMU, or starting whatever, I'm not just saying running back for, to say anything other than that. But if you can have somebody that's going to sponsor, all right, I'm going to go get a Caleb Downs out of the transfer portal, like when he left Alabama. I mean, that's what Ohio, that was the one spot where you're like, all right, let's go get one dude. I was talking with somebody about this. Man, wide receiver would have been a great spot for that. There were some options that got paid this offseason, and there are some opportunities for wide receivers in SMU system. So it would be fun to see somebody do that and do it through legit NIL, car dealership, or what have you, to say, all right, it's worth my time to say, all right, got a guy who could be a first-round pick. Like, let's use Eric Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfer. He is a guy that everybody thinks could very well be a first-round pick. Let's go get him, and then we can pay him legit NIL and rep our business, and it'll be good locally and all those things. So something to think about. Clueless but certain. When can we expect commitments for 2026 to start rolling? So this is a good opportunity to kind of reset where things are. So right now we're in the dead period. I think it ends rather soon here. I don't know if it's March 1 or if it's early March, but that'll open things back up for players to start making visits back to campus. Some of those visits until really late April for SMU will be unofficial visits. And this is excluding transfers. But you will then have in May, things really heat up with official visits, then June, and then July. And June and July are really when commitments really start rolling, so to speak. You could see the one-off commit here and there over the next probably 2 months. But I would say most of these guys are going to take their official visits. They're going to do their due diligence. They're going to talk with the coaches, get a look at spring ball. They're going to get a look at what other schools have to offer. And then June and July is when we're really going to see that run. If things go well, that May 2nd recruiting weekend for SMU, you would hope they get a couple out of that at least, because they are stacking up some nice talent there. But I would say we keep an eye on June and July for things to really start rolling, so to speak. All right, before we continue on with our questions from our On the Pony Express subscribers, I do want to remind you guys that Rusty Taco has a new menu. Head to the Greenville Avenue location and mention Pony Express at the store, or you can enter it online, Pony Express, one word, all lowercase, for free corn fritters with your order. So huge opportunity to try the new menu. Our basketball podcast, the Pony Hoops Insight guys, helped hook this one up. A lot of good things on the menu there for Rusty Taco. We're trying to expand the code and the offering of the free corn fritters to other locations of Rusty Taco. But for now, just at the Greenville Avenue location, and you get those free corn fritters with any purchase. The new menu keeps making those famous tacos that you know and love from, hungover Saturday mornings or late nights or just general lunch, rolling in the right direction. They've made them even better. Love to get a margarita on the patio out there at the Greenville Avenue location now that the weather's starting to pick back up. So check them out. rustytaco.com is where you can find your location nearest to you. Again, check out delivery, pickup, takeout, or dine in. But the free corn fritters, check them out at the Greenville Avenue store location. All right, we continue on with our hot takes section now. Fountain Connoisseur, a great username on the Pony Express, asks, need the hot takes. Will SMU basketball make an ACC tournament run? I am going to say, and it depends on run. I guess run would mean getting to the semifinals. So that depends on if they sneak their way into the top four. And even then, I guess that would mean, and I had the bracket up before this podcast, but that would mean if they got the top four spots, that would mean that they started out on Thursday in the quarterfinals and you win one game and you're in the semis. So, I mean, is that a run? I'm not sure. But a run to me would mean, let's say they're the fifth seed, then they end up playing that second round matchup on Wednesday. I believe that game is a 2:30. I could be wrong, but I'm 99% sure I had that circled just for planning purposes. And if they win that one, then they get into that 2:30 the next day game in the quarterfinals, and that's when you would look for a rematch against Wake Forest. If I'm doing this right, I had the bracket. I'm looking at it now, and I'm pretty sure they removed the seeding for some reason. But I could see it. I mean, SMU's played well away from Moody. I mean, they have no bad losses, so in theory, they certainly can. I lean on saying no at this point, though. They haven't beaten anyone really good, outside of Stanford in a sense, when at the time of SMU playing Stanford. So you got to show me. I mean, the football team got the same treatment this fall against TCU. I felt like the blueprint was there. They could do it. They can make it happen. All the things had to go the right way or whatever. But, I still said, you got to show me. And they did. SMU basketball, you got to show me you can beat a top four team. You can beat a team with, some solid skill players and you can shoot the ball well against top talent. So right now I'm going to say no. I don't know if that's a hot take. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that way, but I'm going to say no. All right. For talking about hot takes, the next two are right up your alley. Will Kevin Jennings be a Heisman finalist? I'm going to say no, but I will say I think he's the best quarterback in the ACC next year. And here's why. I mean, I just think the continued progression, like if you look at Kevin has been someone who has gotten better each year he's played the position. Going back to Sock, I mean, he has taken leaps. And so if you're talking about someone's progression and you're seeing it unfold, I would continue to bet on said progression. I mean, until you're proven wrong. Like Kevin, regardless of what the things he needs to improve on with turnovers and ball security and all those things, he just played at a very high level of football on an offense without, real wide receivers at a high level. I mean, let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. The wide receivers had their moments, but they weren't at a high level. An offensive line that could have pass protected better. They had Brashard Smith as the guy, and that was kind of it. But this year, Kevin in a second year, and this is underrated in this piece. Last year, he got spring as the starter. You know, Preston Stone was limited, but you're not the guy until you're the guy. And that didn't happen until after the BYU game. And now he has a full offseason as the unquestioned leader, starter, all those things. This is a huge offseason for him. I still think the way SMU's offense was able to move the ball last year, and at the same time, you saw maybe not the insane stat level that Cam Ward ended up being, who he was in the eyes of the nation, in part because of the red hot start that he had. That carried him. That Florida game carried him. And despite turnovers and despite making ill-advised throws, no one talked about that until halfway through the season, saying, things are a little dicey there in that Cal game. He threw that across the field interception. I think it was a return for a touchdown. And then, of course, Georgia Tech cost him and Syracuse and all those things. But if you have Kevin Jennings ride what could very well be a huge start to the season, he faces Baylor, faces TCU, got big opportunities to make statements. Then you open up ACC play against Syracuse, who won 10 games last. I think they won 10 games, maybe 9, but won 10 games last year. That is a really good opportunity to set the table for you to be talked about at a really high level all season long. He's going to be somebody who's going to be talked about, but to be the best in the ACC, you've got to take that big next step and jump over a guy like Cade Klubnik. Now, Cade will be interesting to see how things progress with his talented group of wide receivers. They do have to replace Phil Maffa, who's off to the NFL. And, Clemson has kind of been a little inconsistent. I still think they're going to be very good. I have them in my top 2 to kick off the way too early ACC standings. But just for some reason, and call it, recent SMU history, I just don't think KJ will get the respect of, or enough respect of, the Heisman committee. I do think he'll be among the guys considered for a trip to New York, though. All right, here's the hot take. Is SMU winning the ACC next year? I say yes. And I'm not high on Miami. Carson Beck, a lot of variables there. It's a lot of betting on Carson Beck, also betting on Miami to overcome where they are as a program. And anytime you have a returning quarterback, I'm going to side with you in a sense. If your quarterback is good, I'm going to side with, placing my bet. And out of the top 6 teams in the ACC, all won 9 games or more last year. SMU, Clemson, Miami, Syracuse, Duke, and Louisville. Only 2 have their quarterbacks back, and that is SMU and Clemson. I'm going with SMU and Clemson. Rematch of last year's ACC championship game is my quote-unquote way too early championship game pick, and SMU will overcome and win the ACC next year. I don't know if that means they're undefeated and they're a top 4 team and all those things. I don't know, but I like SMU's opportunities. They will face a Syracuse team with a new quarterback. They will face a Miami team with a new quarterback. They will face a Louisville team with a new quarterback. How do all those things play out? And then, of course, you have the heavyweight bout against Clemson. And then you have Wake, new coaching staff, really interesting. You have Cal, new quarterback again, I think. And then you have Stanford. I would assume they'll have one of their quarterbacks back. I'm pretty sure they do. And then you have Boston College, who will have Grayson James back, but 7-6, nothing too special there. So it'll be really interesting to see how SMU does this year. But once again, the path is there. And even a loss at Clemson, that would then tee you up if you win the rest of your ACC games. And if you look at the top 6 of last year's ACC, you face all of them except Duke. That would tee you up to hold tiebreakers over those teams as well. And then that gives the classic bounce back story where you get a rematch and you get a chance to vanquish your your experience in Death Valley. So you ask for a hot take. SMU wins the ACC next season. All right, Pony Reb 95 asks, and we got a comment in the YouTube section as well on this. How are the injured guys recovering? RJ Maryland, Kamar Wheaton, Jalen Knighton. Do you expect Kamar and Rooster back or likely to explore other options? This is a good two-parter. RJ Maryland, I talked to Casey Woods at National Signing Day, and he said the biggest thing with RJ Maryland, he is now really taking ownership of his workouts and living in the weight room, living in the treatment room, which is a huge step. And RJ is one of those guys, I mean, just God-given talent. I mean, just looks the part. Football has probably been easy for him for so long, and continue to develop. He added a bunch of weight and all those things, but now it's taking it to that next level, and he's progressing well in his injury. I fully expect them to either hold him out of spring or, just don't do anything with him. Just put him in bubble wrap. Seriously, he'll be fine come fall camp and ready to go, in all likelihood. Again, maybe limited, maybe you bring him along slowly, but RJ looks to be on track. Kamar Wheaton, Jalen Knighton are progressing, but I would be intrigued to see if they look elsewhere. If, they're both not in spring ball. Kamar got hurt right in the beginning of fall camp. I think third day, or maybe I have that wrong, but no, I think third day of fall camp or so, he got hurt. And so he's had ample amount of time. I guess he could be back for spring. We don't have a formal update on that just yet, but both are progressing, and I'll be interested to see if they're still on the roster after, the spring. And it could just be fresh start. You've had your opportunities, you got hurt. Now maybe you need to drop down to get like an opportunity where you can take your game back up a notch and be a starter and do all those things in what I believe is both of their last years, even with the injury thing. I don't know, but I would say those are guys that I would at least watch to see what their status is after the spring, and we'll see. I would expect both to be limited at best in spring ball. All right, CP2 Verdad Poder grass update on Ford. I don't have one. It's kind of hard to get one, unfortunately, right now with all the changes going on around SMU. But I do know they haven't taken up the grass, they haven't taken up the turf at Ford, and we're about to hit March. So I would imagine that would make it already tough. I don't know. I don't know if that's something they're tabling completely or what, but and anybody knows on the Pony Express, last year around this time, it was grass is going in, it's happening, and then it didn't because of the construction, and now we'll see. Another question, what am I hearing on the East Side Stadium expansion? So this is, SMU has to get everything rev share in order. They have to get money in order. They have to make sure. They can't just do this and then be sitting there when or if things change on rev share and NIL rules and all that stuff, and be left, not struggling. SMU's not going to struggle, but you have to be totally sure that you're taken care of in terms of ability to build roster and or retain coaches, keep them, all those things before you do anything like this. Because they just did a beautiful $125 million end zone expansion, which is great. It did also add to the need to do the rest of Ford. And whatever that looks like, I have no idea. I know the general idea is build it like Lambeau Field. If those want to Google, they did all the skyboxes and all those things, bring in a ton of revenue. You sell those, they will sell out, whether people want to believe that or not. And then you can build revenue, grow that, and do all those things. So nothing quickly happening, especially with an athletic department that's in a lot of change right now. But the desire is there to get it done, as Bill Armstrong and David Miller said when we had him on the pod last fall, you did your kitchen, now you got to do the rest of the bathrooms because you see how good it looks and you want it to look that good. Since SMU Ignited ended 3 years early, what's the total you're hearing kicked around for the next capital campaign? Any athletics included? Athletics is always included in the general capital campaign that SMU's done in the past, until Jay Hartzell really gets here. I know it's going to happen and all of those things. And it's been posted about on the board, and SMU never stops doing capital campaigns. But until there's a new athletic department leadership installed, that can all be up in the air. Like a new athletic director could get named and say, hey, here's something I know that worked really well, excited people, let's do this. And they could say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that as well. But yeah. And then gut feeling on AD and associate AD hires. Just not going to talk about that right now. Early 2025 record predictions. I am going to go with 11-1 for the regular season. So right now, loss at Clemson. I can see a path. But really tough to play there. In a sense, I know Louisville won there this year, but and maybe it's the storyline or whatever, but you have a team that could very well do it. Is that team going to be gelling well enough? Because if you look at SMU last year, right, they won games when it mattered in November. You also could see just a little hint of SMU, maybe like if SMU played Clemson in the ACC championship the way they were playing in late September into early October, I think SMU could win by 10 points. Of course, turnovers are a key thing, but the challenge for this year's SMU team is to, and this is a sign of the expectations. This is a sign of where this program is at. SMU's level of play in November has to continue like it did early in the season. And injuries factored into that. Jake Bailey, RJ Maryland, all of that. Guys are beat up, and they managed to win all the games. So, it doesn't matter like what I say in terms of that. But you want SMU to be playing its best football late in the season. And I'll be interested to see if they're playing that best football in the middle of October and how they manage to then get to that next level of playing their best football in November and into December if they get that shot to go back to Charlotte. That'll be the challenge for this team, because you even look at Virginia. Kevin had a couple turnovers there. You had maybe one, but a couple. You had some moments. He had a turnover against Boston College, or somebody did. So it's just kind of one of those things where there were moments in November where you could tell, like, ooh, SMU, okay, not playing as sharp as they did earlier in the season. And they beat the tar out of Pitt, and they did good things. That's the roller coaster of a season. That's the roller coaster of how good SMU was, and was looking to stay at that level. But I would say 11-1 right now. Bumgarner, give me your guess by percentage on the chance SMU will sell out the following 4 games: Baylor, Miami, Louisville, and Syracuse. I'd say Baylor, they sell out. Miami, they sell out. Louisville, they sell out. And Syracuse, I don't think they sell out. I would say Baylor and Miami, I would say 100% chance. And then Louisville and Syracuse, I would say 80 and 70% respectively. Remember, sellout is, it's still tough to sell out. So, they could be just short a couple thousand, and, maybe somebody buys up all the tickets to make it a sellout, but still, I would say they'll be pretty close on all those games for sure. All right, before we continue on, do want to remind you guys that we're also presented by our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team. Going to have a little cigar action with him today. Talk about some off-season plans and getting ready for SMU football season as well. But SMU basketball, they could get you out to Stanford if you want to go for that last-minute trip. And you could get a discount with on the ponyexpress.com by mentioning our code PonyUpACC. So reach out to them, explore your options for spring break as well. They could get you down to Tallahassee if you wanted to for that SMU Florida State game. But also look into them for the ACC basketball tournament in Charlotte. So reach out to our friends at StatusJet today. They're proud supporters of SMU athletics as well. So appreciate their support of the podcast. All right. Coming down to the finish here on mailbag questions. Terry Webster asks, what are the chances we pick up Ryan Hampton for basketball? That would be amazing. Absolutely. amazing. It would bring the full circle-ness of having Emmanuel Mudiay committed and all those things if they could get Ryan Hampton signed and on SMU's campus. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, he's the number 1 overall prospect on 3. He is an incredible basketball player, really, really good player who was on campus. He's been on campus this fall to hang out with the staff. He's been back for a game now. And the biggest thing here as SMU recruits him is, I mean, obviously NILs can play a huge role in this when you're talking about a number 1 overall player. But look at the high level development of Andy Enfield and getting, when guys are lottery picks and getting them into the NBA, this is that time where they can say, okay, we've done this. Come be the guy at SMU. Be the face of the program. Come here 1 year and then head off. I mean, that's the type of player we're talking about here, and it's worth every single penny for SMU to make it happen. I mean, there's no question about that. But the chances, it's early. It would be great if he reclassified to 2026, but we're still so far away in this. But man, I would say they're in a good position early on for how early it is. I mean, that's kind of the best way to put it right now. I don't think they're at the, point of, okay, favorite, team to beat for the next year and a half or so. But they're in a good spot early. They've been pushing all the right buttons. I mean, getting him on campus when he's not taking many visits either. He's not doing that too much right now. All right. Lastly, way too early predictions on how the running back and wide receiver rotations will work out. Talked a little bit about this, so it's a good follow-up in a sense where SMU's running back room, I would say Chris Johnson Jr. is going to get every opportunity to do what Brashard Smith did. I mean, he's going to be your lightning guy. He's going to be your speedy back, and he's got he's got the wheels. I mean, he can really, really go. And he was underutilized in Miami. We'll see if that holds true with Miami castoffs that, 3 of them are at the NFL Combine right now who weren't utilized right, weren't given the right opportunities, and weren't helped to reach their goals. And now they're going to be in the NFL. So Chris Johnson Jr. will get every opportunity. And yes, Lance adds that Ryan Hampton's dad did go to SMU, Rod Hampton. So there's been a long run of Hampton brothers who are unbelievable basketball players. And the program's been at different times where they weren't able to capitalize on maybe these connections, but Rod Hampton did play at SMU. So huge piece there. But just knowing Rod a little bit, I don't think it's going to impact the recruitment too much, but it's a good reason for them to be around a lot, especially at a time where, the team's won 20 games now and is on the bubble in year 1, which is, they've had opportunities to improve their standing and be in the NCAA tournament at this point. But in year 1, getting hired, Andy Enfield, I think, was officially hired April 1st or 2nd or something like that. Because Jack was born and I was sleep deprived showing up for the press conference. Shout out Michelle letting me go. But they got hired well over a week into the transfer portal window. So, all right, back to running backs. Chris Johnson Jr. going to get the opportunity. I mean, he's somebody that probably needs to continue to bulk up, add some size, but he is taller than Brashard and really, really fast. So if he figures it out, look out. But then, I think you're going to see one of LJ Johnson, Jermico Green, and Derek McFall in no order take the load. And the goal, I would say, if you're SMU, because this can tell you if you really hit on these players, but I would say the goal would be for Derek McFall and Jermico Green to break out. And you have East Texas A&M, you have Missouri State, you have 2 games that are in that first 4 that you could really line up opportunities for those guys to get them and take them. And if that happens, then you're cooking with gas and you're in a really, really strong position there. So I don't know how the rotation will work out. I am very high on Derek McFall. I'm very high on Jermico Green. I would love to see LJ Johnson put it all together. It'd be huge if he could be healthy, if he could be that guy, if he could be that veteran. And if that happens, then look out. And then Chris Johnson's the wild card. But it's just so up in the air. Spring ball will tell a lot. I think they'll be we got a good glimpse of what SMU was kind of thinking with Brashard Smith early in his time at SMU, and it really panned out well very quickly. But we'll see with these running backs. They're an interesting spot. But all right, wide receivers, slot, a lot of the buzz is around Randy Reese right now. That looks like your Roger Daniels type of replacement, very explosive player, guy that can certainly get it done in that respect and works his tail off, wired well. That's kind of a dark horse, not dark horse. He's right there in the mix for it, but not talked about enough player that needs to step up and has every opportunity to do that. And that's another reason why they're going to start out Dalen Singleton on the outside. They're going to let him go and take his speed and see if he can get off the press and make plays down the field. Because I've watched Dalen do that at the outside receiver spot in high school at times, do that in 7-on-7. He's got that speed that you create that separation, and all Kevin has to do is lay it out there for him, and that can happen. And if that does, then sweet. You've solved the speed issue at wide receiver, I would say. And Randy's fast, and Jalen Cooper's polished. But most likely, I think you'll see a lot of Romello Brinson and Jordan Hudson get their opportunities, and they'll be, and look, both are really good blockers. So don't let that piece, be lost in this as they try to figure out the rotation. But RJ Maryland will play on the outside a little bit. I think they're going to try to use him a little bit like Kyle Pitts as well. So a very intriguing matchup player on the outside for SMU. So we will be keeping a close eye on those guys. I would say Link Rhodes is another that will get the opportunity if he grasps things this summer. And that's where, again, Kevin Jennings is your starter. Now that you're into spring, now that you're into summer soon, all those reps throwing with receivers. I mean, it was, and this is just brief times when I was on campus and happened to run into them or whatever. It'd be Kevin and Jordan Hudson throwing last summer. They'd be getting extra work with their trainers. Preston Stone would be getting extra work with his trainers and the receivers and doing all those things. And you're developing that chemistry because you're the starter. Now SMU has that whole offseason for that to happen with all these guys. And Jalen Cooper and Dalen Singleton right away are two of the harder working guys on this team, which, I mean, that's just kind of how they're wired. They've been that way. And so that's huge. And that's something you can't discount. And then the other factor is Link Rhodes super fast. He's already there. Can he pick up the playbook? Can he pick up the timing? Can he pick up what SMU wants him to do? If he does, that's incredible. I would say the wide receiver position is probably, I don't want to say probably, I think it's pretty safe to say it's the biggest wild card position on this team. Because running back, I think there's enough flash and things like that they can scheme up some ways and you'll be fine. And Derek McFall explosive and all those things. But wide receiver, gone is Keyshawn Smith. Gone is Moochie Dixon. Gone is Jake Bailey, Roger Daniels. So you don't have you need somebody to step up. Running back, they kind of have new faces. It's a youth movement for the most part. And you had guys who are injured or kind of on the shelf in a way. This wide receiver room, it needs somebody to step up. And I think all options are on the table. And with that, they would then give some of those opportunities, if they're earned, to those guys. And the rotation could be very interesting. It could look totally different from game 1 to week 10. And that's, I think, exciting because of the talent that they have at that wide receiver room. All right, guys, one final reminder here as we get out of here. The mailbags closed. Head over to roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Check out their SMU line. It's getting to be spring. It's going to be probably 80 degrees today. So get your polo on, maybe get your hoodie, maybe get your quarter zip if you want to roll that way. But use code ponyexpress20 for 20% off your first order today at roback.com. Appreciate all of our sponsors: Mark Villasana, Northwest Insurance Agency, StatusJet, statusjet.com, Thomas Auto Group. You've got Rusty Taco. You've got My Perfect Franchise. Everybody, we appreciate all of you guys as well who have subscribed to ontheponyexpress.com. We can't do this without you guys subscribing, and the site continues to grow. So jump on board for spring football. the biggest thing I can ask of you is spread the word about what we got going at ontheponyexpress.com. So thank you guys who do that already, and we'll catch you next time on another live edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Going to try to do this a little bit more. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.